Hello everybody, I am back with a second video. I didn't expect one to go up a little sooner than expected, but hey, I guess the sooner the better, right? But today I wanted to talk about Overwatch 2, specifically the current state of the game. To give some context, I started playing Overwatch within like the last year of Overwatch 1 before they transitioned over to Overwatch 2. And from then on, I kind of been playing Overwatch like almost religiously up until probably I want to say maybe the season Mauga came out. I think season 17 or 18. I don't remember. But how I got to that point reflects to how I still feel about the game now. And that is that I don't necessarily like the direction the game is going in. And this is not to say that the game is bad. In fact, I think for people that like the direction it's going in, I think it's a great time. But for me personally, it's not hitting the same. I'm not really a big fan of the way Blizzard is taking things, and I'll cover all that in this video. Before we start today's video, I would appreciate it if you guys like and subscribe. It would give me some motivation. You know, I'm doing this for fun, but some motivation goes a long way. So to start off, one of the main key reasons would be 6v6. And I'm sure you guys had heard all about 6v6, the whole discussion between 5v5 versus 6v6, and all that drama and stuff. Essentially what that drama stemmed from was pretty much tanks not being able to have fun. I played tank in Overwatch 2. It was not a fun time. I even dropped the role, but occasionally I would, go back to it because at the end of the day, I still feel like I'm a tank main, and that's only because I like the concept of a tank in the game and what that role entails. So that's kind of the only thing that has me irking to like, oh, I gotta play tank. I want to play tank, but it sucks playing tank because of how the game is. Not to mention at the time Sombra had her hack, and this was before any or all of the reworks she's had for Overwatch 2. So it would be miserable. You'd get like a Zen on the enemy team, Sombra would just hack you, and you GG's, you can't play the game. And of course, this was before hero bans, so yeah, it was not a fun time to tank in Overwatch 2. It also didn't help that supports were kind of being power crept along the way while they were trying to figure out how to make the tank experience a little better. But at the same time, they didn't want to compromise support. So there was a lot of back and forth and experimenting just to sort of not gutter support or not. I don't even want to say gutter. It's almost like they didn't even want to give them a slap on the wrist, to be honest. And in turn, because of that, tank kind of suffered a lot. Now, fast forward sometime later, we finally get 6v6 debuting as like an experimental mode, and now 6v6 is a permanent mode in Overwatch 2. However, what pretty much the point of this video, well, one of the points is I am not a big fan of how they implemented 6v6 in this game. I think the whole role queue thing that they have, well, sort of role queue, but sort of open queue thing that they have going is actually smart. I actually like that idea. However, I just don't like the way Blizzard has treated 6v6. It's almost like they just kind of threw that mode in as to people can stop complaining about it. And some people can watch this and say like, hey, you got your 6v6 mode, please shut up. But we really didn't get the 6v6 we wanted to. I think everyone that was advocating for 6v6 for the longest of time can safely say the implementation and attention to it isn't the same way we were wanting it to be than what we eventually got. I can't speak for anyone else, at least when it comes to this, but for me personally, I used to be a 5v5 believer. I gave Blizzard the benefit of the doubt a lot, and my patience started running short like around season 6 or 7. So I've been on their side for quite some time when it comes to this whole 5v5 stuff. But after seeing the way they've handled things to avoid any 6v6 or just to compensate for the 5v5 formula, I just found myself thinking this is not worth it. The frustrations, the constant change of the game just to sort of, compensate for 5v5 is just not worth it. And it just felt so unfocused and almost like they were just throwing things at a dartboard and just being like, hey, do that, dude, let's do this, let's do that over here, let's do this next time, blah blah blah. But yeah, it got to the point where I was just like, you know what, dude, guys, I think the Overwatch team is great, but I think it's time to call it quits in this 5v5 stuff. We've had so many seasons to test and experiment and do all these changes, and almost each time it just never necessarily fixed the issue that could have been so much easily remedied if there was just simply a second tank. Now I know them like suddenly going to 66 as a format, like say a year and a half into the game's life, it wouldn't be just, as simple as a flick of a switch or something like that, because they would have to sort of balance the rest of the game back to 66, especially Overwatch 2 heroes, like, Junker Green, Kiriko, Sojourn, and everyone else that came after. So there's that sort of task and trouble at hand for that 66 swap. But at the same time, I just can't help but feel that it would have been so much easier to do that than what they did, which was pretty much just throw stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks. More necessarily the amount of time they spent throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. But anyways, 6v6 is here now. However, I don't think Blizzard, honestly, I'm just going to be blunt about it, I don't think Blizzard cares for it. I honestly don't even think Blizzard necessarily cares about the core 5v5 mode in the game. You know what, let me rephrase that. I don't want to say don't care, because that's not really the case. I don't think there's an actual person at Blizzard that legit doesn't care about what they're doing. I know people say that a lot about game development, but I guess the better word to say would be that 6v6 and even 5v5 role queue is not at their highest priority. I feel like ever since the introduction of Stadium, it's kind of been clear to me that Stadium is the Overwatch 2's development team's baby. And what I mean by that is it pretty much is the mode that will set them apart from Overwatch 1. And I remember when that reveal happened back in that developer update where they said groundbreaking changes would be implemented, I remember feeling a bit of worry and almost sadness in a way that they're like introducing this whole brand new game mode. It's pretty much just not even like a game mode, it is like a separate game almost within Overwatch 2. And it just felt like they kind of were dismissing or moving past everyone's feedback and criticisms of what we were experiencing before that, which was, the 5v5 not being a functional format, or at least just being a format that makes it tough on certain roles and it's just hard to balance around. Like I remember they said, I believe its Stadium had been in development for 2 years or a little over 2 years. So the time frame would make it be where it's been in development like not long after the start of Overwatch 2, maybe about a year in. They were trying to figure out this 5v5 stuff in parallel to making Stadium. And I feel like once they got to the point where we're ready to announce this, they wanted to announce it so bad so that people can sort of stop talking about 5v5, like the core mode and the issues with it, almost because they want people to migrate over to Stadium. At least that's where I'm kind of getting at myself, because they kind of clearly did that with 6v6. They kind of added it in and then, we're like, all right, here's 6v6, shut up about it. But yes, seeing that Stadium announcement, I just couldn't help but feel like they might be spreading themselves too thin. Not only do you have 5v5, you have the 6v6 mode, and now you have Stadium mode. They're still even doing Mystery Hero, even like Mystery Hero competitive. And that isn't even accounting for like the open queue or role queue versions of certain modes. And then with perks being implemented and this and that, blah, 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 30 perks or whatever. I don't even know how much there are. Probably way more than 30. I don't know why I said 30. But it just seems like Blizzard is spreading themselves out too thin here, where I just feel like they're not really focused on one thing. They're definitely focused on Stadium more than the other modes. And that's not to say that, a game can't have multiple modes or be, for all like types of people that like certain different types of things, whether they like 5v5, 6v6, or Stadium. But from a vision standpoint, I just feel like it's a little disheartening to know that the Overwatch we all kind of knew is almost in the background of things, like almost like it's not a focus. It'll always be the backbone of Overwatch 2. I mean, the name is there, but it just seems like Blizzard, or at least specifically the Overwatch 2 developers, sort of don't want to make Overwatch, if that makes sense. Like they've actively tried so much to differentiate themselves from Overwatch 1. But the thing about a sequel is that usually sequels build upon what the backbones of the previous entry was. But it seems like in Overwatch 2's case, they were just trying to change things and remove things and add different things that were to replace other things in order for the sake of just not being what Overwatch 1 was. And at the end, I kind of feel like them being adamant on not switching 66 over instead of 5v5 as the core mode was a sign of that, especially because I feel like they definitely knew that 6v6 would have solved so many issues. It would have created new issues too, yes, but the new issues created would be outnumbered by the issues solved. Now, remember all those videos and rants about the Blizzard balancing team you'd see from content creators or you just read on forums? Very critical videos about what they're doing with the game. And this was around the sort of 5v5 stays time. We didn't really know anything about what they were going to actually do with 6v6 other than us complaining about it. But people were very, very critical, and honestly, rightfully so. I don't think I became too critical of the Blizzard balance team until maybe past season 8. I still tried to enjoy the game as much as possible, but eventually I kind of burnt myself out around like the Malga season. But if you look back on those times, do you really think, and this is not to downplay anybody at the dev team, I'm just saying, do you really think it is plausible that if they couldn't really figure out the 5v5 basic formula in the normal role queue mode, how are things gonna go when now you got perks for every character and they're constantly introducing new perks or changing perks into completely different things, plus things like stadium, and now with this like sort of shoehorned 6v6 mode? That's a lot to sort of keep an eye on as a developer, especially as sort of a balanced team. Which is funny because I think that and perks are pretty much how heroes are going to be designed gameplay wise from here on out, and I'm actually not for that at all. But that's a video for another time. Getting back to this whole spreading too thin sort of thing, I still do think tanking in Overwatch 2 is a rough experience. I still think it's a volatile experience, and overall it's still not fun for me, which sucks because, again, like I've said, I like tanking. I like Overwatch. I like tanking in Overwatch 1. So it's disheartening to kind of have that sort of experience and fun ripped away from you. But anyways, I've been rambling for way too long. This was supposed to be like a 8-minute video. What do you guys think? Do you guys think Blizzard is spreading themselves too thin? Do you think maybe I'm just overreacting? Or do you at least, see my point? I'd like to see you guys' points in the comments. But yeah, no, that'll do it for this video. Again, it wasn't much. It was just me rambling on. This was my second video on the channel, and again, I'm having fun with this sort of thing, just kind of rambling. Yeah, I do plan on making more intricate content, be it research, analytics, and editing, because I know I'm kind of lacking on that right now. But yeah, a mix of both, rambling and smart rambling. And yeah, primarily just Marvel Rivals, occasionally Overwatch. So yeah, if there's something you guys want me to talk about specifically, feel free to leave it in the comments. I have ideas in my head that I just kind of ramble out, but if anyone brings up a subject, I'll gladly talk about it, or at least mention it in the next video if it pertains to it. So yeah, second video. I will catch you guys again. I still don't know an outro, right? So I'll just catch you guys on the next one. Have a good day or night, and peace. Yeah, see you in the next one.